On this episode of Locked On Angels, I used to watch Angel games with anticipation. Now I just watch Angel games with frustration. Only my favorite team can do that to me, and I'm going to tell you how they did that to me yesterday. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Topanga. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Monarch Money. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Just use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball with you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. On today's show, how are the Halo hitters working through their Halo hitting slump? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what they told Jeff Fletcher and respond in our final segment. But first, Mike, the Angels fell to the Mariners 5-3 last night up in Seattle. Let's get into the details about this one.
Yeah, before the game, Gustavo Campero was recalled from AAA. I like that move. All he's done is hit, and this team hasn't. And then they designated J.D. Davis for assignment. And then Carl Edwards Jr. was outrighted to AAA Salt Lake. It's funny, when the Angels DFA guys and move guys around, it's interesting that nobody else claims the guys that are on this Angel roster. It happens all the time, doesn't it?
With a name like Carl Edwards Jr., it's like he'd rather be driving NASCAR than pitching for the Angels right now.
Right. John, the lineup actually got me kind of intrigued. Yeah. And I was glad that they're moving some pieces around. We're going to talk a bit more about Ron Washington's philosophy with the lineup on tomorrow's show. It's an interesting comment that he made. But Neto leading off, and that leadoff spot for the Angels has been terrible. A .229 on-base percentage entering last night's game. Shawna hit second. Trout, Ward, Soler, Ohapi, Rengifo, Adele, and Paris. That's how things got started. That's how they looked getting into this game last night.
Tell you what I liked about this. We talked about it preseason, the different kinds of lineups the Angels could make. This felt like a 1 through 10 lineup, Michael. And the theory there is that you have your best hitter up twice before 9 outs are recorded. And that's what they got here with Zach Neto leading off in this one. And obviously he's been the best hitter in just 9 games since he's been back. So the Angels get going here. Bottom of the first, Kohanowitz gets into some trouble, gave up a single and 2 walks. Then he got a Rosarena to ground into a force out. Neto threw the runner out at home, which was the kind of stuff he does at shortstop, Mike. He always makes those heads-up plays.
Yep.
And so if he's not in Gold Glove contention this year, I'm going to throw a fit.
And in the short amount of time that he's played, he has 4 defensive runs saved, and he only had, I think he had 9 last year. So he is well on his way to crushing that number. And that play last night was another play and reason why he has all of the defensive run saves that he has so far this season.
Rowdy Tellez and J.P. Crawford pop out to third, so a great inning after a difficult start. Wait for Jack K to get out of that one. Top of the second, the Angels had a chance to respond and get momentum going. Soler and Ohapi walk to start the inning. First back-to-back walks for the Halos since April 9th, 20 days ago. The Angels had a walk in the first 3 innings, 5 total through the first 4 innings. However, they didn't score when they had runners on. There was no attempt to move them over like in the second inning, right, Mike?
Yeah, in the second inning, there's no outs, runners at first and second. And instead of a sacrifice bunt, Rengifo is swinging away and he grounds into a double play. And I had to say out loud, gosh, doesn't it make sense to just move him over? I get it's Rengifo, and I get that he's one of your better hitters in this lineup, but you haven't been good.
No, nobody's been good.
A few weeks. So why not just move the runners over, put some pressure on Miller, who's on the mound, who's struggling to throw strikes? It just didn't make sense in that moment. And for Ron Washington, who was all about the bunt at all the wrong times last season, doesn't want to bunt at all this season when the Angels desperately need that.
What happened to the guy who liked big bunts and he could not lie? What happened to that guy?
He's the cause of my frustration is the problem. And the reason why it's a problem, John, is because then Joe Adell ends the inning with a strikeout, another missed opportunity. And again, Miller was all over the strike zone, he was not throwing strikes. And so he was struggling last night. And
let me just say that I felt like last night I'm going to get some grief for this because they lost and nobody cares what I have to say in terms of wins and losses, right? But I'm going to get some grief for this. I felt like the approach for all the hitters, for the most part, there are definitely exceptions. And you mentioned one here with Rengifo. I think Taylor Ward staring at strike 3 when it's just the slider that's obviously going to hit the zone and he stands there and looks at it is frustrating. I think there was a fastball in on the hands of Nolan Shonowell. That was frustrating because that led to a double play. I felt like for the most part, the approaches were better, baby steps in this one. And I know it's a loss. I know it sucks, but I felt like everybody overall seemed to have a better approach. I was watching intently. I was watching closely. And the reason why they didn't deliver in those first 5 innings against Bryce Miller, he had that wicked splitter going. And so for me, it was like, okay, I can tip the cap to somebody who's throwing a good splitter up there and getting guys to swing and miss. I didn't feel like they were swinging and missing on stupid stuff like it's been the last couple of weeks. I felt like, oh no, those were actually really good splitters that he was throwing. Yes, he was wild. Yes, he was struggling to hit the zone. But when he threw that splitter in a pitcher's count, he was getting those guys to swing over it. But I'm not erasing anything of what you're saying in terms of make some stuff happen here, guys. You had opportunities to do it.
The debate over the last couple of days has been coaching versus hitters, like who needs to come through, right? Last night was the epitome of the coaches, manager, didn't help these hitters because you're right. Their approaches were much better. Not everybody, but most of the team was much better last night, drawing walks, getting on base, those types of things. But again, no calls for sacrifice bunts, no calls for stolen bases, not putting the runners in motion. Don't even need to steal a base, just putting runners in motion, right?
And not fighting off pitches that you should be fighting off and fouling away and just standing there and, I got struck out.
But I think that there's the difference though is on base stuff and calling for a sack bunt. That's Ron. That's got to be Ron. You got to come through there with looking at pitches. That's on the hitters. But what I felt that they did last night was that they improved a bit. I will agree with you. They improved a bit in their approach. But this last night was really more on manager than it was on players.
Did you say more on manager?
That wasn't unintentional, Johnny. So bottom 2, the Mariners do make the Angels pay for not coming through with runners on. And with 2 on and 2 out, a 3-2 pitch to Polanco, and he hits a 3-run home run. It was a sinker, John, that didn't sink. Conowitz threw a high fastball, which you've been calling for on this show, and he got Polanco to foul it off. He just missed that pitch, so it made sense to throw a sinker, but it just didn't sink. He didn't keep it down.
You remember when Polanco was attached to the Angels over the offseason, but he didn't want to come here because of their reputation? Funny how that works, right, Mike?
Right.
Kohanowitz did settle in after that bad inning. 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 4 walks in this one, but a career-high 6 strikeouts. That was good to see from Kohanowitz, something that he definitely needed to do. I think that spoke more to Kohanowitz over the Mariners offense because I know that we've been saying that Kohanowitz needs more swing and miss on his stuff. And he did some different things last night, including implementing a changeup there. He gave up just 1 hit since that 2nd inning. That was the home run. He did his job, but the Halos offense didn't help him out, did they?
No, top 5. Angels did get their 2nd hit of the game. It was Kyron Paris hitting a double, broke an 0 for 25 slump. They didn't score in that inning, and it was 20 straight innings without a run at that point. Just personal note, John, I hate stats like that because I just know that that's just a sign of how this season is headed because Angels couldn't do anything even when they got runners on. Again, they're standing still, no attempts, any of those things. And then top 7, Logan O'Hoppe hits a solo home run, but it's a solo home run. It's 17 of the last 18 home runs have been solo home runs, and that's frustrating. Now, it did stop the scoreless streak at 21, but it still they're still trailing. So 3-1, we go into the bottom of the 7th. They bring in Jose Fermin, John, and then Polanco hits a 2-run home run, right?
His 2nd home run of the night. All 5 runs came from Jorge Polanco, there's no such thing as a shutdown inning for the Angels,
No.
Michael. It's never existed. You can't put those two in the same sentence unless you're saying there's no such thing as a shutdown inning for the Angels. Why not Ryan Johnson? Why not McDaniels? Why not any of the guys that are more high leverage? Because it's only 3-1. And it turns out it would have been 3-3 had you not given up that 2-run home run to Jorge Polanco and put in this Jose Fermin, who I was happy they called him up. But you put him in this high leverage situation where you're still in the game. And now that I think about it, this is a conversation we had last year with Ron Washington, where he bails on the game and puts in somebody who's not going to keep you in the game, like a Zephyr John or even a Brock Burke, right? If you want the lefty up there. He bails on the game way too early, and that proved to be true because the Halos would have tied it had they not been trailing 5-1, and then they end up 5-3 because of that Jorge Polanco home run.
Right, yeah, because top 8, the Angels get back-to-back doubles from Neto and Shawnuel. They score a run. Then Soler hits a double, and Shawnuel scores. It's a 2-run game again. Would have been 3-3, but now it's 5-3, and that's where add-on runs are so important, and the Mariners got that, and that's where a shutdown inning is so important, and the Angels didn't get that. And so they lose this game 5-3. Konowitz gets his 4th loss, and it's almost like it's a repeat of last year where he's pitching into the 6th inning and even further sometimes, getting a quality start, and the Angels just can't do anything for him and for any pitcher. And they've lost 4 in a row now, 12-16 now, and finding themselves just sinking further and further in the AL West.
Yeah, well, the rest of the AL West is battling it out. You know, they had the Rangers and the A's split in their series so far. The Astros have taken 2 so far from the Tigers, and so everybody, is on the rise. And the Mariners get a win against an AL West opponent, and they keep their lead in first place in the division, while the Halos keep sinking further and further down. They have to turn it around. Again, I feel like it was baby steps today. I like the approaches. I like the way that they were handling things up there at the plate, but not all of it. And it's exactly what you were talking about. Standing on the bases, not putting any pressure on a pitcher who, again, is struggling to find the zone and is beating you with that splitter. You're not putting any pressure on that guy. You're not making him think about you over at first base. You're not making him think about you behind him at second base. So it almost felt like, okay, we did this part right, but I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to mess things up. I don't want to get thrown out. And that's the issue, right? That's the issue, is that you finally got maybe 0.75 of the equation correct, but the rest of it, you're too afraid to do anything with because you don't want to be the one who screws up. And that's the position the Angels have put themselves in right now. Everybody has to be perfect. Konowitz has to be perfect. Jose Fermin, again, probably shouldn't have even been in that situation, but he's got to be perfect against Jorge Polanco, who is off to the greatest start on earth, apparently, this season. So again, it just comes down to, you got one part of the equation right, but the rest of it still needs to catch up. Hopefully we see that in today's day game against the Mariners. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, how are the Halo hitters working through this slump? We'll share what they told Jeff Fletcher, and then we'll respond in our final segment. We'll get into all of that coming right up.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Don't ever do that again. Monarch Money is here to help you. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. And you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. And working with financial issues and working with your accounts with your partner is so much smoother with Monarch Money. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals. You can stay on the same page without all of the stress. And who wants all of that stress? Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our promo code LockedOnMLB at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com, promo code LockedOnMLB for half off your first year.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. In this conversation we're about to have, we were able to get some insight into how the Halos are handling their business at the plate. Obviously, Everybody is struggling. They've all gone cold at the same time. We discussed yesterday what Johnny Washington said to Sam Blum of The Athletic and what he's doing to help the Angels hitters work out of their slump. Raised a lot of red flags for us, Michael, in his answers. But we got a little bit more insight thanks to Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register. He spoke with 4 hitters, Trout, Neto, Rengifo, and Adele. Jeff asked them how they prepare mentally and physically for each at bat. We're going to share what each player said, and then we'll respond in our final segment. Mike, why don't you start us with fellow Mike Trout?
Well, we know he's been struggling, but there is an element to his struggle that's a bit of bad luck. He has a hard hit rate percentage of 47.1%, still well above average, but one thing that has contributed to his struggles is that he's striking out a whole lot. So Jeff Fletcher asked how Trout is trying to get out of the slump and get better, and he said it all starts pregame. He said his pregame routine starts with 35 to 50 swings in the batting cage. That includes working off a tee and hitting off of a machine that throws fastballs and breaking balls. And he said at the moment, his primary focus is on his back leg. Trout said, if that goes, then everything tilts back and I'm swinging up and out. Trout said that he tries to get out on the field for regular batting practice when he needs more swings. And for much of his career, he's almost hit exclusively in the cage, but that's changed this year, especially when he gets to a new park. He wants to get the feel of what the park is like. Trout said hitting on the field against a coach throwing with much less velocity than a real pitcher is about perfecting his swing path. He added that you should be able to master batting practice and direct the ball where it's going. He said, right before the game, I like to return to the batting cage, take about 10 fastballs and 10 breaking balls from the machine. And he said, as for the scouting report, I like to hear what the pitcher does, but just the basics of that. Trout said, for me, less is more. I want to know what the pitcher has, what his secondary stuff is. And I don't sit on anything. I just look for the fastball all the time and react to the off-speed stuff. For some people, it can be very different in their approach.
Yeah, for Zach Neto, he said he goes about things a little bit differently. First thing he said was that hitting is 90% mental and 10% physical. It's going out there and letting your talent happen. Trademark Zach Neto on that one. To prepare for a game, Zach starts by studying the opposing pitcher the night before. He said, you want to see where the damage is, where he gives up extra bases. Coming to the field, you want to have an idea of how he attacks hitters and how he gets people out. Once he's at the ballpark, Neto's routine is minimal. He hits off a tee, then he hits flips in the cage, and that's it before batting practice on the field. Neto said he rarely hits off of a machine, and when he does, he prefers to use the hard rubber baseballs that the Angels use to let hitters see a little extra hop and a little more break on the slider. He added that he doesn't want to look at video of himself swinging unless he's really in a slump. Mostly, he trusts the coaches to keep an eye on his swing, only showing him video when they identify a problem.
For Joe Adele, his routine starts with small swings so that he can keep his lower body, what he says is quiet. He wants to keep it quiet, not moving too much. Adele hits 10 to 12 flips in the batting cage with no step at all. He said he's simply trying to find the barrel, and then he hits some flips focusing on line drives up the middle. After batting practice on the field, Adele returns to the batting cage to hit against a machine. He likes to hit against fastballs and curveballs, and he likes to go about 10 minutes before the game just to warm himself up. Adele said he only wants to watch video of himself when something is wrong. He said that usually the problem isn't in his swing, but with pitch selection, something that we've pointed out on this show. Lastly, Adele says he'll take about 10 minutes of reviewing the scouting report on the opposing pitcher shortly before the game so that he can have it fresh in his mind when he goes to the plate.
Finally, let's talk about Luis Rengifo. He said that he doesn't take many extra swings when things aren't going well, but he will look at video. He says he prefers tee work to hitting off the machine in the cage. He also said that he doesn't want to be overloaded with information about the opposing pitcher. He said, I just want to know what he throws and then play the game. Overall, Rengifo has had a simple approach to hitting, regardless of whether the hits are falling. He says, if you're not hitting well, you have to make an adjustment, but you shouldn't change routine. Mike, a lot of variety here in these 4 very different players, right?
Yeah, a lot of variety and a lot of different approaches. And I think that that's going to be important for our conversation in the next segment as we respond to what these guys have done, because they shared some very unique things that, John, if I'm honest, it feels almost antithetical to what Johnny Washington said in his interview. And so I wonder how that tension plays out, or if there's any tension between the players and Johnny based upon their approaches.
Yeah, big credit to Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register for getting into these conversation with these guys, because they provided a lot of insight. And so we're going to give you our response to what Trout and Rengifo and Adell and Neto had to say coming right up.
Hey, while you're watching or listening to the show, why don't you grab a handful of Wonderful Pistachios? You can get started at wonderfulpistachios.com. It's a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, and maybe even might calm that frustration that you have with the Angels down. It's filled with a good source of protein, and it's one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with all sorts of fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you healthy and going all day long. You can pick up the no-shell variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, you can get the in-shelled option. They're a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Final segment here on Locked On Angels on a Wednesday, responding to what we heard from the 4 different hitters. Again, Trout, Neto, Adell, and Luis Rengifo. Mike, is there anything that you heard that you thought was helpful as we go through our frustrations and all of our emotions about this team and how they've been performing at the plate recently?
I think what was helpful for me was first just hearing about the routine. And it didn't sound like it was just us hitting out on the field and then kind of figuring some things out. It's interesting to see that each of their routines were very unique. They had some similarities, obviously, but overall very unique. One of the things that I thought was really helpful is that they're aware of some of their bad habits. Like, for example, Trout said his primary focus is his back leg. He said, if that goes, then everything tilts back and I'm swinging up and out. And that's why he's popping up a lot of pitches, right? And that's why he's struggling. Why he's also striking out, because if he's swinging up and out, he's not swinging on a level playing field. And that he's aware about swing path. When he goes out there and he has a coach pitch to him, he's really working on his swing path when he goes out there to make sure that he's not swinging up and out. So I thought that was really helpful to hear from Trout, that he's recognizing where he's struggling and that he's working on hitting that high fastball, because that's where he really has struggled over the last few years. And we've seen some improvement last year when he was playing, and of course this year right now as he plays. What about you?
What stands out to me from Trout's routine is, it sounds like a lot, Mike. All those dry swings, all those practice swings, all of that stuff before a game. I wonder, because remember we talked about Logan O'Hoppe and how much he was doing that before a game last season, and how he thought that contributed to the wear and tear on his body and how he was tired toward the end of the season. I wonder if that's going to catch up with Trout at some point, and I worry, considering the number of physical injuries he's had in different places over the years, the back, the calf, the knee, and of course he broke the hamate bone. That's kind of a freak accident thing. Right. But I think about how much wear and tear is Trout putting on himself before he gets out there. Now, having said that, he did say that this was all very new this year. So perhaps there's something to be said about the fact that he's taking all of these practice swings before a game, something he didn't do in previous years where he was hurt. So I'm going to trust that he knows his body best, even though he doesn't have the best track record with that. It just felt like a lot as we were describing what Trout had to say about his routine. Now, one thing that stands out to me too, and this kind of goes to each of the hitters, is I just want the basics. I don't want to be overloaded with information on the pitcher. I don't want to be overloaded with information on what's going on with my swing, things like that. That raised a concern for me. And not because I don't think that these guys know what they're talking about. That's not what I'm trying to say. Here's what I will say. Yesterday, I brought up the fact that when we prepare for our shows, we spend, we've spent countless hours getting into the details so that we can say, well, here's what's wrong with this guy. Here's what he does really well, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that you would hope is presented to the players. Now, when I hear them say, I'm not interested in all that, I want to keep it simple. I want to know his, velo, and then I want to know his secondary stuff. That's all well and good. But here's the thing. When we present this mountain of information, the biggest obstacle and the thing that takes the most effort is to present it in a simple way. Mm-hmm. And so for our everydayers, we hope that you walk away from every episode feeling like a smarter baseball fan. But if I were just to overload you with stats and numbers and, WRC plus and not explain what that is along the way, I think you'd feel lost and you wouldn't want to tune in and you'd tune out. And I totally get that. So part of the challenge of what Mike and I do is presenting it in a explainable way, a meaningful way, and a simplified way that's easy to understand. So when I hear these hitters say, I don't want to hear all that, I want to keep it simple, perhaps, Mike, they're not being presented with that information in a simplified, easy to understand, and meaningful way that perhaps would help them. It's just a matter of how it's being communicated based on I don't know who's presenting it, data analytics team or, the coaching staff or what have you. But the fact that they are trying to keep it simple tells me that it feels like too much. And if it feels like too much, I don't trust that it's being presented in a simple and meaningful way.
Interesting thought. I wonder in hearing you say that, I have to think about what Johnny Washington said about, as a team and as a group and all of those things. This is why I will always be an advocate, no matter who the leader is, no matter who the coach is, no matter who the manager is, that even though you have a lot of people to deal with, you still need to make a unique approach and take a unique approach with each hitter. Mm-hmm. One specific reason why I believe that is Joe Adell says usually the problem with him isn't his swing. It's his pitch selection.
Yep.
Right? And so when you bring information to Joe and you say, like last night, right? Bryce Miller on the mound, he throws that wicked, what was he throwing? A splitter.
Wicked splitter.
Yeah. And it was, moving off the plate. You tell Joe Adell, bro, that's going to always fall off the far side of the plate. Mm-hmm. When it's coming, don't swing at it.
Yeah.
Right. Then he's going to go, okay, I got it. When I go up there, I'm going to look for anything in, and maybe I'm going to look for a fastball, but anything that's out and off speed that's going down, I'm going to lay off of. That would be so accessible and so simple for him. Plus it would align with what Joe Adell needs. Mm-hmm. And so taking what you've just said, I get that there's some players who are like, man, I'm just an athlete. Let me go out there and swing the bat. Let me go out there and throw the ball. And I get that. And God bless them. That is not Mike Frisch. But I also understand that from the nerd Mike Frisch side, that as a coach, as a leader, as a manager, whatever, you can bring good information to say, hey, here's a great way to approach this guy. And here's what's going to make you successful tonight. So go out there and be the athlete that you are. But as you're standing at the plate, remember that pitch is going to fall off the plate. So don't go after it. Because if you do, you're going to look foolish and strike out a lot.
I know Joe Adell struck out in that at bat we spoke about earlier, where the Angels had a chance to do something after the Rengifo ground out, but then there was another at bat later on where there were a ton of pitches, Mike, that he would have gone chasing a year ago.
Yeah,
and I can't tell you enough. I don't know how to emphasize it, but ever since spring training, for me, it's watching Joe Adell look at pitches low and away and seeing what he does with it. Yeah, he's got a few strikeouts on that this year, but for the most part, I've seen him lay off those pitches.
Yeah.
So there has been an improvement in his pitch selection. In fact, there was a fastball that he really could have done some damage with that he was just laid on last night, and it fouled straight back. Right. And so to know that his emphasis is on pitch selection,
I
think is really a key point there.
That was one thing that I did notice about last night. We did talk often on yesterday's show about Johnny Washington and him saying like, hey, we want to end the at bat when we want to end the at bat, right? And I know that we wrestled through like what that means. Ultimately, I saw that show up a couple of times last night, like when Joe Adell missed the fastball, when Taylor Ward watched the fastball go down the middle. It was a lot of that where I was like, okay, to Johnny Washington's credit, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
They've missed their pitch. Now they have to reevaluate and figure out what's coming next and end the at bat again when they want to end the at bat. And they didn't do that much last night, but I did notice like those are pitches you can't miss. Those are pitches you can't watch. And it makes sense what Johnny is preaching to this team.
Sure.
The problem is that it's just not turning into results. It's not turning into success. And that's the problem. So I did see some of what he wants them to do. I did see that last night, and I didn't see them take advantage of the pitches that they should have.
Well, I think the biggest question is, and then what, right? You missed your pitch. You didn't end the at bat when you should have ended the at bat. And then what?
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you miss that pitch? Because that's what I mean to say. Like, I felt like the approaches were better and not quite there yet. They haven't solved the entire equation. They're like halfway through it. And that's part of it, Mike. It was like, hey, we saw more guys swinging at the pitch that they needed to end that at bat. But what happens if they didn't swing at it? What are you going to do next? I feel like that's the jelly missing from the PB&J here, right? They have the peanut butter, but no jelly, right?
And that's the problem with bringing in a Jose Fermin when it's 3-1 versus a Ryan Johnson or a Brock Burke or a Ryan Zefferjohn to hold that lead because your team looks like they're starting to maybe figure some things out. Man, give them a freaking opportunity to figure some things out. And they did in the next inning.
Yeah.
But you waved the white flag way too soon last night, Ron Washington. And it's not all on you, but it's those dumb bozo decisions in the middle of the game where you're like, well, I don't want to use an arm because we're going to be playing Detroit this week. You know what? Please manage game to game. That's what I need you to do.
The full bullpen was rested, Mike. They had a day off yesterday.
I know.
Like, what are we doing?
It's just manage game to game. That's all you can do instead of thinking about what's coming up. And that's what I felt like he's been doing the last couple of weeks is I'm thinking about all of these games that I have to have arms for. Man, just do it game to game right now because this team desperately needs the win and they desperately need some momentum. And you coached against your team last night, Ron, and that's not great. It's not good. And he's frustrating to me.
It's enough. I've had enough of Angels management, Angels coaching, putting this team, behind the 8 ball before they even start, whether that's, screwing them over with a late flight to Minnesota and going, well, we just wanted to, have a night game. Well, yeah, you put your guys in a very bad position.
Not sure why they got swept.
Yeah, I can't believe they got swept. Oh, shocker. And then, some of the coaching decisions of, we talked about it, Darno batting 5th, Jim Anderson batting 5th on opening day, and then this kind of stuff from Ron Washington in terms of his bullpen management. It's not like he always does this, but the mistakes really stand out. And when I think about it, Mike, I feel like we had this conversation a lot last year with Ron Washington throwing in the towel before they needed to.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, every game, every night, all season long. And you can find Game Night on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comments section. We always do our best to try to get back to everybody, schedule permitting. These days are busy. Right. I'm doing dad mode during the day and then working in the evening. So I'm trying my best to get to all the comments there. And so we hope that you'll join in on the conversation. Mike, what do you have on deck for Thursday's show?
We're just going to keep talking about hitting. We're going to talk about a minor league hitter who is really improving. We're also going to talk about what Ron Washington said about last night's lineup and what he wants to do with the hitters. And it's a lot of hitting. It's a lot of frustration, but I think it's a good topic to discuss, and we'll talk about that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
You know what I think I'm going to do right here? I'm going to bring in a guy that has no experience and ask him to hold the lead.